I really enjoy going to a little extra work to get that special shot. And this is going to be one of those instances. Now here's a case of where when I glue the brass tube into the blank, you only see me doing this end. You can't see what's happening on the other end. However, if I also use my little camera here, I can get both at the same time. Now they're both running at 60 frames per second, and if I sync them up in the editing program just right, you should be able to see when the tube goes in on this end, it'll come out on this end. At least that's the plan. I've done this before and it sort of works. Okay, this big ugly 2x4 is just to help hold it down, so that when I'm working it in and out here, I'm not going to accidentally knock it off of this piece of wax paper. Oh, the wax paper, by the way, is I don't want to be getting the CA glue dripping onto my little cloth here. Now I've only got about a minute to work with this stuff. In the past I've had it where the brass tube all of a sudden seized up and it wasn't in the right place. I do not want that to happen again. I gotta watch my time here. Okay, so I've got it in a little bit on this side, and it's also in a little bit on that side. Now I'm going to use this curing agent here, and I just do the one end. And you should notice that very quickly it'll cure. There, you see it turning white? Now what I'll do is I will pull it out here, and the brass tube should stay in there. And the rubber band will help to clear out any CA glue that got into the brass tube. Now, in my exuberance to use two cameras here, I forgot to plug this end with a little piece of wax. I'll show you. I'm going to do the other three tubes. At least I'm going to plug them with the wax, so you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, I'm not going to waste a bunch of your time here gluing up the last three brass tubes into the last three pen blanks. This series is getting a lot longer than I had originally anticipated on. Now, it's not hugely important that you do this. But what is important, that is, if you get the CA glue into the brass tube, you have to get it out before you press your pen together. Otherwise, your pen's not going to want to go together right, and you're going to end up damaging something. And, as before, I did the remaining three blanks exactly the same way. Now all I have to do is clean out those wax plugs and make sure there's no glue on the inside of the brass tubes. And we're ready to start turning. Okay. Now, today is September the 1st, and the Cornerstone golf tournament in Carman is actually going to be on the 10th. So you might think I've got 10 days. Well, I've got probably a good 8 days anyway to finish these pens, and I'm right now a little bit ahead of schedule. Things are going really good, probably because I like doing what I'm doing. However, I have a tendency to sometimes get sidetracked, so I don't think that's going to happen with this series though. It's going really good here. Okay, that's one cleaned out, and just 3 more to go. Now there is another step here, and that is that the end of the blank has to be ground down or sanded down so that it is just touching or flush with the end of the brass tube, and also square. And I find that the easiest thing to use is what's called a barrel trimmer. And simple little device. It's kind of like a drill. So what you do is you put this in your drill press, and then you just grind it down. Now you can also use a sander, like a belt sander or a disc sander, but I like to use this better because it makes the top of the blank completely square with the inside of the brass tube. In other words, if the brass tube had been going at an angle, now of course I'm exaggerating, but had it been going at a bit of an angle, you'd want to make sure that the top of the blank was also at the same angle so that your parts of the pen will press together better. When we press the parts together, I'll explain that. Anyway, that's the next step. Now you can't help but notice I got a vacuum cleaner nozzle hooked up there. Well, the reason for that is I want to be able to see the top of the brass tube as soon as the cutter touches it. I don't want to make the whole thing too short, otherwise the pen parts aren't going to fit together right. Now, when you buy a pen kit, it almost always comes with instructions, and if it doesn't, well, you can probably easily download them from the supplier's website. And as you can clearly see here, the instructions are going to tell you what you need, what size drill bit, what size mandrel, and which bushings you need. Now let's talk a little bit about the bushings. And here they are. Now normally, a pen kit like this that just requires one pen blank would only have the 2 bushings, one for each end of the blank. And I ended up with 2 sets of bushings for some reason, which turns out to be a bonus, because what can happen now is I can turn 2 blanks at the same time. It'll save me a bit of time. So they go on like this, and then this is the mandrel. This is a type A mandrel. It really doesn't matter which way they go on in this case. Okay. And then you put the nut on the end. Okay. Okay, and then the idea is that what you do is when you're turning this down on the lathe, you turn the ends down until they get to the bushing. And once you're down to the bushing, you know that the end of your pen blank is going to be the right size to match up with the parts. Well, you'll see when I'm starting to press stuff together why it's important to have it the right size. Anyway, let's stick this in the lathe and maybe we can turn it down yet tonight. Now just check and make sure that everything is clear, and it is. And it should be safe to start up. I'll run it up to about 2,000 RPM. Now I just noticed that this episode is going on 12 minutes long, and I guess we better finish turning these blanks down tomorrow. So please watch for episode number 4, and thank you for watching.